Board Meeting with NAT, where new leadership meets the waves of change. Dive with me into discussions on personal development, on transformation, a salty format, captivating, motivating stories and interviews with industry leaders and inspiring personalities. Welcome to another episode of Board Meeting with Nat. With me today in the podcast lab is Joyce. She's an expert around female cycle leadership. We will talk about the female cycle and how you can benefit from it, how you can be more productive as a woman, how you can really use this power of the cycle to have a better life. Also, we will talk about how companies can use this topic to empower their women. It's also about leadership today. And when you're a man and you think now, ooh, this is not my topic, I bet you have a sister, a daughter, a wife, a girlfriend, or probably you have also women in your team when you're a manager. So it is also your topic. So please stay tuned and welcome with me, Joyce.
It's great to be here with you. My name is Joyce Groot. I am a psycho-leadership coach. And I have extensive experience in the corporate world where I worked in HR, mostly as a recruiter. I discovered a lot about my cycle in the way I perform. And it is mind-blowing for me why I did not know about this in my earlier years. And I discovered this a few years back, and I'm here to share with the world. I think it's needed.
Absolutely. Was there a moment where you said, this is the time I should invest more time to understand my cycle?
At some point in my career, I felt I'm on a good place, but I was noticing a lot of stress. I found it difficult for me to relax and lean back to manage basically my stress. And it overwhelmed me. I got the burnout, and unfortunately, but also fortunately, I learned a lot about my body and about my nervous system. And I learned that there can be chaos in our system when you have a burnout, and that chaos changes across the cycle. So that's where I learned, oh, wow, my cycle literally impacts my mental health, my feeling about myself. Yeah, then I worked with a personal trainer to get stronger after burnout. And that's where I learned about our cycle in performance as a CrossFitter.
I feel like a lot of women, at least in my circle, so they think about the period, right? When do I get my period? So they track that because it's something annoying usually. And you also look on the fertility days because either you want to get pregnant or you don't want to get pregnant. But the rest, for me at least, was very, I wouldn't say uninteresting, but I was not really aware of it, that it has an impact. I feel like a lot of women have this blind spot. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that? So what is your experience with your clients?
So what we usually experience, like you summarized very well, we are only paying attention to a few days of the month of our cycle, and the rest we ignore. Actually, our cycle is a movement from our period when we are bleeding up till our ovulation, where ovulation is often ignored only if you want to prevent or get pregnant. And this is when you start noticing that. And I see there is a big shift also with hormones. The last years, we go more to the natural way. And this is when you get in touch with actually our real feelings and our real changes in our body. Because with hormonal anticonception, it kind of flattens out the curve. And that's why we only notice our period, because we only notice the week when we're bleeding. I have been on a hormonal anticonception for many years, more than 15. At some point, I noticed, no, this is not good for me. And I noticed actually in that time also that I had a lot of challenges with my mental health, which reflected in the relationship I was in at the time.
It's so interesting. Very often we get pills when we are young because we have period pain. It's the first thing that you get. Oh, you're 12 years old, you have cramps, you have PMS. So we disconnect from our cycle. Is that correct?
Yes, true. Because we don't have this peak and rise of estrogen and progesterone that happens estrogen before our ovulation, and then we have the peak of progesterone after our ovulation, supporting the maturation and fertilization and implantation of our eggs. Or when it doesn't happen, we happen to have a bleed. If you don't have that process of building up the estrogen to get ovulation, so your body thinks basically that it's always in one phase of the cycle. So you don't have these peaks anymore. And this is when you feel like almost every day a bit the same, maybe like men.
Now we're coming to an interesting topic. Okay, like men, are we completely different in that point? Because I remember I heard men have a cycle as well, but they're of course not bleeding. They don't have a period. But what is the difference? The male cycle, the female cycle?
The hormones in the men's body is the cycle of one day. One of the most important male hormone is testosterone, which peaks early in the morning. They also have changes because that lowers down in the end of the evening. Actually, hormone testosterone is for women and men to give us a lot of power. It's great for muscle buildup. It is also a very good driver for going after your purpose. That's why you see men are usually very productive and they want to get things done and they're really focused in the morning, and after their peak in afternoon they still have it. They're able to be more social, and in the evening they slow down and they are more available. So if we know this, that they are really focused on getting things done in the morning, it's good to know, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like just with the woman's cycle as well.
Yeah, so I'm also very interested now to understand when we talk about female cycle leadership. I think a lot of women or men out there do not really know what this means. Would you explain it a bit?
Yes. So cycle leadership means that you work with the different phases of your cycle. And it's about creating an inner authority of the way we feel. It comes from the change of hormones that makes us feel different in every phase. And it comes with our feminine qualities, intuition, our feelings, right? Our emotions. If you create inner authority within yourself of your feminine leadership or your cycle leadership, you know with what kind of feeling or what kind of quality, in the cycle leadership framework, I call it a quality, with which quality you step into your day, or reflecting back, what was the quality for me today? How did I see the world at this moment?
So it's actually awareness about what is going on, and to use this awareness as well.
Yes.
I did a webinar with you recently, a masterclass. I thought it's so interesting because, as I mentioned before, I was just tracking when's my period coming, when are my fertile days. I had not really these crazy hormonal reactions. You know, some women fight with their men during the period. I do not really have that. So I thought, okay, I'm fine. But what I realized when I look at the full cycle, it makes so much sense, because sometimes I have these weeks where I'm like, I'm so tired. And I thought, why is that? I have so much on my plate. I want to be productive. Now it helps me to understand, oh, I'm on that day in my cycle. It's absolutely normal that I feel exhausted. Maybe I cancel some social activities and I feel okay saying no to a party or to a concert I'm invited to. This helped me to be more aware.
Exactly. So it is about tracking. And I think it is great being aware where you are in your cycle. And you can do this by checking in every day. I have created a cycle leadership chart, which you can use, where you check how do I feel or how is my performance today. After 1, 2, 3 cycles, you can already see how your performance changes. And then I also teach like, oh, what do I need or what I can do best in what phase of my cycle. So for example, like you're saying like, oh, I'm more tired, I don't get things done, or you feel like in that phase, it's usually our premenstrual phase, that often we know as more challenging. If you know your needs and what you need to do or how you organize your calendar, for example, with a little bit more time between the meetings or having a little bit more time for a power nap or a longer sleep, you know you can perform better. But also that premenstrual phase is a really great thing to wrap things up. So it's a great feeling that you can have in that time. You are like, I don't feel like I get things done, but you really feel that desire in that phase to finish it. And this is what we want to know. It is also the phase where we have maybe more discussions or we are speaking our truth about something that has been annoying us. And if we know that we are more sharp, one of the qualities of the framework, if we're more sharp, we can use it. So if you have like a contract or anything that you need to review, you know, now I'm going to sit, I'm going to focus. I have a calm feeling because progesterone makes us more calm and leaning back. And you get this focus and very sharp mind. That's the power of it.
I have a friend and she's a manager. She manages a big team. And she told me when she was aware of her cycle, she realized, for example, that a day before the period, she shouldn't do job interviews with applicants. I found it so interesting because she observed herself and thought she's so critic. And interviewees, they're never good enough. So she realized that. And with this awareness, she just moved the interviews a few days after her period.
Yes, that's authority. And often I feel in the corporate world or at work that there is a block of sharing where we are, but we cannot always expect our manager to give us that free time. Organizing your calendar when you have the possibility and to mark in your calendar the days where you are so you know upfront, this day is going to be not so good for interviews. This day is better to wrap things up or to make a plan or anything. So it's creating your authority about your calendar and your mindset. I think in any phase of our cycle, we are able to perform, whether that is in the gym, whether that is that we have a sales meeting, whether that is like we have interviews to do. I think we can do that in any given part of our cycle when you know.
It's again the awareness to know what is happening with my body right now. Why am I reacting like this?
Yes.
And then you can just think for remote workers and also for self-employed women, it's quite easy or at least easier to adjust to their cycle. But what can women do when they're in a regular office job on site? Because they can't just say, I do a little nap here. What I often do, for example, when it's the first day of my period, I just get a hot water bottle. I walk around in my pajama. Nobody cares because, I just need a nice top for my business calls on Zoom. But if you're in office, this is a bit harder, right?
Definitely. So it starts with awareness, like we said. If you know how your schedule looks like and you have to go 5 days in the office, but we can also be careful with like, how do I organize my day at work and how do I organize my day in the evening or at the weekends? So is there a way that I can rest a little bit on a Saturday morning or I make sure that I have already my food prepared for the evening? So you maybe fill your fridge already full with any food prep, because you know that things are going to take a little bit longer.
Do you work with companies as well that are already adapting certain measurements to be aware of the female cycle and to support it?
Yes. So we see nowadays in companies that there is a lot of awareness for menopause or menstrual cycle issues and that women experience certain dissonance because of their cycle. What my mission is with NUC and with Cycle Leadership to educate organizations, women and men. It's not just about the period. It is also about all the other phases of our cycle. Because if we only focus on a period where we might be a little bit slower, we do not recognize the time when we are on full power. And sometimes I can work easily a full day. I start at 8 in the morning. I was in the gym before that. And I will wrap up my day at 10, go to sleep. I don't need so many hours around ovulation. And I can have a lot of social activities, etc. But we don't recognize that in the way we work. There is organizations where we see programs about diversity, and attainment is a big topic for companies today, me coming from the talent acquisition area, it's not just about attracting women in the workplace, but it's also about maintaining them. Initiatives we see is making sure that we have women's products in the bathroom, or I've seen an organization where you could get like your warm water bottle. I think there is still a lot to do to really learn about the qualities.
One example, what I experienced in the past when I worked for a big tech company. I was in a virtual team meeting and I was a bit quiet. Usually I talk a lot. So my boss was asking, "Are you all right, Natalie? You don't say that much today." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm good. I just have period cramps. I have my jogging pants on, you don't see it, and I have my hot water bottle on my belly." And yeah, I said after the call, I might do a 10-minute nap. So all the things you mentioned, I was able to do it because I was working from home. And then he said something that really surprised me, and I was quite impressed. So he said, "Put the special day in your calendar." I was like, "What do you mean the special day? It's not a sick day. You don't have to take official sick day. It's just once per month you can mark it in a calendar if you don't feel well. It can be for the period. It can be for mental health. And you get this free day. You don't have to explain anything." And I was so surprised that this is happening, that a company in tech is offering this possibility. So I was quite impressed. And I talked with other women from other companies and they were like, "Wow, we never heard that. This is great."
It is great that you have this option. And we both work in big tech companies. I think it's a great initiative that needs to happen. I find it interesting that it comes from the manager self. And you didn't know about this when you're on board. I like that the fact that they make it a personal day and not say it's a period day.
Exactly. Because I asked back as well. I said, "Is it also for men? Because else it would be not fair, right? Because men also have sometimes not a good day."
Yes.
So, and he said, "No, it's for everyone." And I thought this is so important, right? I'm a fan of trust, and I really believe if you give trust to your employees, they don't abuse it. And I really thought probably not many people use that day because very often you would work if you can work, right? It's not like, "Oh, I just want to have a day off, so I claim I have my period and have cramps." No.
Yes. And it's also a great thing with psycho leadership is that like you're a little bit more quiet in your period when we are bleeding. And it is also because we have an inner focus. Our period has an inner focus. It's a very present moment. And our ovulation is an outward focus. So being like this, that is totally fine because also in there is a power. It's a great time to look at where I would like to go. It's a great time to set intentions or to think about your intentions when you are bleeding and to take some rest and retreat. Because if we do that, it's the natural built-in rest system, which is the best for our nervous system. And this is how we can balance. If we don't rest, we cannot perform. Also, athletes, they're also having not a all the time training hard mode. They also have their rest. Also in our work, we need to think, okay, where do I peak and where do I reflect? Of course, work sometimes requires to deliver, but we can deliver and we can perform, like I said earlier, on any given phase in our cycle.
For me, it's also about being kinder to yourself, by understanding where you are. For example, if you feel like, okay, today I'm more introvert because I'm more inwards focused, to not judge yourself or push yourself into a position where you have to perform like crazy, where you say, okay, maybe 2 days later, I'm back in my power, but now maybe I take a step back. Today I do more the strategic stuff or whatever, and next week I'm back on stage and go crazy with my presence.
Self-care and self-talk, that's key for anything for our mental health. Otherwise, if we don't listen to this inner nature of us, our system is going to speak and we are going to get sick. We are going to get worse, like burnout and any other issues.
There is a gap sometimes, when you look at management. So when we talk about company initiatives and so on, in all areas, it's not just about the cycle. Also, hybrid work, flexible working environment, diversity. But then when it comes to leadership, it's a different story. So what would you tell men that are leading teams with a lot of women, what kind of advice would you give them?
It starts always with inner authority, but we need to feel the freedom to have inner authority. And that is something that managers need to focus on, managing a team with one woman or with many. That doesn't matter. One woman in the team, this person needs to have more strength to really step into her femininity, because being surrounded with a lot of men makes it more difficult to be vulnerable or work with our intention or using our feminine qualities, which is necessary. So it starts with inner authority, also educating managers. You educate yourself on menstrual cycle awareness. And I think it requires really a mindset shift. But we also need buy-in from leadership. So I also highly encourage leaders in companies to support this way of working and to not just keep it for themselves, but share this knowledge towards the other people in the organization and speak about it. It's okay, this other person can also speak about what their experiences are in their cycle, because every woman's cycle is different. And
Absolutely.
When we're talking about it, we have more confidence to listen to our own and not see it as a weakness.
I think the point of sharing is so important with the period, but also menopause or PMS, all these topics, they're so different for every woman. Yesterday I talked with a woman who had an early menopause, and she said her boss just said, I had no issues at all. I don't get it why you have all these hot flashes. There was no empathy. And she thought, okay, maybe then I am not normal. So I think it's so important to share and to talk about it, because then we understand, okay, there's so many different reactions, for example, for menopause or for the period. Some people have pain, other people don't have pain. My friend, she said almost once per month she broke up with her boyfriend. For a long time, she was not aware. She thought, okay, our relationship is a mess. And I'm really mad at him. And he's doing this and that. And he thought, oh my God, my girlfriend turned into a monster. What is going on? I don't know you. Until that point where she was really aware and thought, oh, shoot, these are my hormones. And I can control them, luckily. So I think it's so important to share to get a better understanding.
Yes. And I think there is a lot of female health problems like cramps or PMS. Recently, they introduced PMDD, which is more a severe form of PMS. If we are expecting that everything should flow normally, that then you have a good cycle. But there is, of course, there should not be all these women's health problems. I think also when you align your calendar, which is called cycle syncing, you sync your calendar with your cycle, you listen more to what happens in your body with your hormones. And if you work according to that, I believe there is less suffering. And if we also speak up and we share and we talk with our friends about our cycle, but also not just other women, but also with men, and creating this awareness that the world is going to be much more softer in our every month cycle. We're experiencing this every month up to our menopause. We are actually preparing every month for menopause and holding all this tension that we feel premenstrual. It's very similar that we are training to get menopause, or we notice as we go older, we also have more pre-menopause symptoms, or women experience the change in their body after 30s already.
I think when the society talks about menopause, it's not very nice, right? The same with the period. It's something that's annoying. That's not a nice thing. What would you say does this change when the body prepares for the menopause? What are the good sides?
The good side is being on the other side. Menopause, it's the place where we step into our real authority, our wild power, it's called. And it's the place where we are doing something for our community. When our menstrual years is more focused on ourselves, growing every month, becoming a wiser woman. And then we are like servicing. I think it's a great change that we are building up to. And this is what I teach in the psycho-leadership masterclasses, what this actually means. But like the change of being like post-menopause, it's that you feel that you found yourself and this is who you are.
Sounds beautiful.
Right.
It's a good different perspective on the topic menopause.
Yes.
I remember in the workshops you talked about the seasons. Would you explain that a bit more?
Our psycho-leadership inner seasons. I use the similar names as the seasons of the year. So we all know our winter. It's a time where usually it's faster dark. We are spending more time inside the house. It is the time where it's a little bit, we feel like being cozy or sleeping more. Spring has its own quality, summer and autumn. And this is what we as women also experience within our cycle. So we experience our inner winter. Our inner winter is the place where we are having our menstruation. It's our place to retreat, to rest, to have an inner focus, like being inside the house or being inside of ourselves. Summer of spring comes after. It's like usually like a bit like a playful, like, I'm ready for spring. I want to go out and I want to do things. And we feel that in our inner spring as well. And the same for summer. It's a very outward focused time where we like to be with our friends on the beach. That's how I see my summer. I want to be with my friends on the beach, or I want to go on holiday and to fully enjoy life and fully enjoy like who I am and step in that confidence and make things happen. And this is our summer is around our ovulation. And this is the time to really power up at work as well. And if we don't do that, if we don't step into our confidence and in our authority and do what we need to do, we might have a little bit more difficult time around autumn because we feel like I haven't used that summer enough and now it's getting cold again outside and the days get shorter and I'm like, I'm not ready for this yet. I want to, and then autumn can be really difficult. Also in the seasons, our outer like nature seasons, but the same for our inner seasons.
So it's really good to use the power of every season.
Yes.
Like the benefits that come with it.
Yes.
And to be aware of it.
Yes. And also not to expect to be in a certain way, in that we have to be like in our confidence, but with awareness, knowing like, okay, what is happening? What is happening in my life? What is happening at work? What is happening in my body? So creating this awareness of seeing how can I better step in my confidence.
Or maybe also, why do I see the world today in that way?
Yes.
Because this was for me something that I understood quite late. So when I actually learned more about the cycle, because sometimes you still, even if you don't have these crazy mood swings, that you're like, oh, today everything goes wrong. And a week later, you're like, oh my God, I love the world. Here I am. I have so much energy. And when you don't understand that, you're like, oh, maybe I'm in the wrong job.
Yes.
And I observed that a lot with other women who said, oh, I don't know, everything goes wrong this week. I feel like it's not my place. I should just apply for a new job. Yes. And this colleague was mean to me. And then a week later, they were like, oh, everything is fine. I'm actually quite happy. And I thought, ooh, what is going on? So interesting, right?
It's really about relating to other women and men around us, or like the men relating with women as we change and we see the world different. One time I remember sitting in Amsterdam in a cafe, waiting for my friends. My ear caught the conversation that the girls had in the cafe. Because one girl said to the other, oh, it's such a good morning. Everything goes smooth today. And then the other girl in the cafe responded saying, really? It's so messy today. I don't agree with you at all. I noticed the other girl who was very positive and said that everything was going easy and without any obstacles. And I saw her doubt about herself, about her observation, how the morning in the cafe was going. I think with awareness, like knowing, okay, maybe she experienced the world slightly different than I do. Mm-hmm. We have less self-doubt. My friend today today is feeling like this, I am feeling like that. And it can change. Exactly.
Could be an interesting question to ask. Which day are you in?
Yes. And we can feel it with each other. And if we know about like the qualities of each season, if it's a spring or a summer or the other side, you can feel with the other person and can also understand like, oh, this person is a little bit more quiet. And 2 weeks later, this person is very spontaneous and outgoing and has a lot of energy. So you don't doubt about your relationship with this other person or with your colleague. You don't doubt like, oh, did I do something wrong that the other person is more quiet?
If we compare now the women's cycle and the men's cycle and the female qualities that come actually with us women, you know, that we bring into our careers, into our jobs, it seems like, oh, men are always performing and we are quite weak as a woman. And that's not true. So what would you say? What do we bring into our positions?
It's been proven that our engagement within the teams, but also our productivity and our accomplishments within organizations with diverse teams, so including women, are more better than just men in the team. One of the things that women bring, our deep intuition that we have. A great example for women, it's a natural thing to sense very fast like what's happening in the room. And we feel like when there is something off, we know it because we have this strong sensation. Another quality of women is our ability to connect. When we are, for example, networking, women are less sensitive for hierarchy. It's no surprise if we look at that women in sales can be very successful because their ability to connect with the stakeholders, with the target audience, and empathy for your colleagues or anyone around us increases our engagement with the team. That is also one of the beautiful qualities. So if we look at that, there is a lot what happens in the corporate world is that we women are being sent to women empowerment trainings, how to fit in the corporate world. But actually what we are doing there is how do we fit in or how do we work in a masculine way?
Interesting. Wow.
Yes. So we both have our masculine and our feminine side. But rejecting our feminine side, it also rejects like one part of our nature. And if we only work in our masculine way, we're rejecting so much. So we get unsatisfied. We go beyond our limits with the way we work, or we would leave the organization if we reject all these feminine qualities. That's another topic.
It's very interesting because I just thought about my career and I worked for different big corporations. And I remember for a long time, I think maybe until my 30s, I was just taking painkiller once per month because first day of my period, I had really horrible cramps. And I had back then not the possibility to work flexible and from home. So I had to go to an office and I just tried to function. And this is the thing what you say. We try to fit into this culture. I could either take a day off, but I actually want to go because I was like, I'm not sick. I want to be productive, you know? So I forced myself by taking a painkiller and feeling miserable half of the day. It's in waves, right? When you have cramps, you have a few hours pain and then it's all right again. That was so interesting that you mentioned the whole thing is not really built up around the female cycle and for women. I think it's getting a bit better with the hybrid working options and work from home options and flexible times, but it's also not everywhere.
I noticed when I was at an event about women in tech, and there's a lot of things that organizations need to do. And it starts, of course, when women become mothers around the age 30, 35. This is also, if you look at the data, this is when women leave often jobs. And myself, being around that age at that time, I felt like the desire to leave and to do other things, but not just because I became a mother. And also with COVID, I was having my challenges being a single woman living in Berlin at the time. Most of the programs were around parents. But what do you do with yourself if you're a single at home alone? Or what do you do like as a single woman in the corporate world? So it's not just about finding flexibility for mothers to give birth or to have kids at home, but also about who we are as a woman, because that's where is space.
Do you have some good advice for women out there how to connect better with their cycle during their month?
So there's a lot of apps available in the App Store where you can track and find which day you are in your cycle. That is one thing you can do, but I also encourage to check in with yourself. And that is what in some apps, they also have tools where you can write the mood and you can see how your mood changes. I created the cycle leadership chart, which you will get when you join the masterclass or the 101 program or any of my programs, where you can check in with yourself every day and you can see it like in a chart format, which is a very clear when you put a few of them next to each other. You can see how your performance, mood, or anything changes. And the last one is to put your cycle in your calendar.
You mean sync it, for example, with your Google Calendar?
Yes.
Yeah.
You have an app. It's called The Agenda. Automatically, you can sync it with your calendar. I do it personally manually, so I can have the option to adjust. And I always put in my inner seasons. So winter, spring, summer, and autumn. So I know with the colors how to organize my agenda in that week. We can be very confident in our summer to plan our autumn very full, but if it's there, you can see and you can plan better your days.
Do you have an example of your work life as a sales recruiter in tech, how you are actually using that in your daily life?
When I am working, I check in with myself every day in the morning. I do this on Instagram as well, so people can see like how I check in with myself.
So
and
you
how
publicly post how you're feeling.
Yes, I try to be as vulnerable and real as possible on Instagram.
I love that.
So I check in with myself on Instagram or in my journal, and I try to push myself in the spring and especially in the summer, when sometimes I can feel a little bit slow-ish, and I tell myself, I have a positive self-talk, like I can do this now. And I would do like a few interviews a day. So I could have easily 5 interviews. For example, at the end of the day, I would have like 1.5, 2 hours free, and I would put myself to source, where maybe in another phase, if I would, my premenstrual phase, I would have 5 interviews. It's very hard for me to push that time. But I need, as a sales recruiter, it's the same as sales. We need pipeline. I need to know when I have to build pipeline. And if I don't do that, it's going to be very challenging. And the results are not going to be there. That's how I work with my cycle as a sales recruiter.
That's a great last word. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Natalie. It was such a pleasure to be here talking about cycle leadership with you.
Now I have to check my cycle again to know which day I am in. And
I'm on day 14.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll check
great.
on Instagram what you wrote about today.
I did. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to us today.